30,000.
30,000?
5,000.
5,000. Anyone else?
18,579.
Very specific, thank you. The average balance was $114,000. Now that sounds like a really big number. But when you think about that's the average for all ages, and that number might have to last you anywhere from 10 or 20 or 30 years in retirement. Suddenly, that really big number seems a lot smaller. Now you might be wondering, what is a young girl like you thinking so much about retirement and retirement funds? Well, a few years ago, as part of my job, I had to design a website for 401k enrollment. And as a user experience consultant, it's my job to interview people and run focus groups. So I went to a university and I ran focus groups for dozens of people, interviewing everyone from janitors to economics professors. And it turns out, it doesn't matter how many degrees you hold or what your paycheck says. Everyone has the same problems and blockers when it comes to enrolling in a 401k plan. So I'd like to share some of that experience because some of you might have experienced those same blockers when deciding if you want to enroll in your 401k plan. The first issue that came up was people said, I don't have enough money at the end of the month to invest. There's no room in my budget. Well, I'd say to these people, maybe you're thinking about it in the wrong way. Maybe you should think about what you can put away at the beginning of the month instead of what you have left over at the end of the month. Has anyone here been on a diet before? So if you've been on a low-carb diet, what happens when you go to an Italian restaurant and they bring you bread to the table?
You sit there and fight with yourself about whether you should eat it, and usually you give in.
Exactly. Well, sometimes what I do is I tell the waiter, don't bring the bread. Just don't even put it on the table, because I know that if it's sitting there, I'm going to be tempted, and after 5 minutes, I'm going to give in. But we can do the same thing with our 401k plan. If we tell our employers to take out just a small amount before we ever see it, before it hits our paycheck, then we're setting ourselves up for success. Now, I'm not suggesting that you ask your employer to take away your entire paycheck. But you could start with a small amount, like $25 or $50 or 1%. And I bet that after a few weeks, you won't even realize that that's missing. Now the next blocker that came up is that people didn't know about the free money. If somebody offered you a raise and said, there's no extra work, there's no extra responsibility, there's no extra hours, would you take the raise? Pat would. Well, employers that offer matching plans are essentially offering you free money or a free raise. What that means is for every dollar amount that you put in, your employer puts a designated amount also. So if you put in $20, your employer gives you $20. If you put in $100, your employer gives you $100. And they often match up to a certain percentage of your salary. Now every plan is different, so I can't guarantee that all employers do that, but you can check with them to see. Now the last blocker was, I don't know what to invest in. My employer gives me so many options, and I don't know what fund to pick. I'm not that experienced. Well, this can be pretty overwhelming, especially for someone that doesn't follow the stock market. There was an interesting study done by Fidelity a couple years ago where they tried to examine the most successful accounts. So they looked at all their accounts and they wanted to see which accounts are best performing. What are the characteristics? Does anyone have an idea or a guess for what that was? The best indicator of how good a fund does? Or how good an account does?
It tracks the overall market.
Tracks the overall market?
History.
The history? Anyone else? Turns out that the best performing accounts hadn't been touched for 5 years. Either the person left the job and forgot about their account completely, or they passed away. So that might indicate that it doesn't really matter which fund you choose to invest in. That if you invest in a fund and hold it for a long period of time, you're going to come out ahead. So hopefully, my experience doing research has helped you all or inspired you all to fund your future and enroll in your 401k plan.